Chris Smith, Sports Business Journal staff writer, and he's covering this. He covers sports finance as well as reporting on team sales, other investments throughout the industry, and kind enough to join us on short notice. Chris, is it just a coincidence that these teams are being sold now?
In part, yes. I think we're seeing a bunch of different reasons why these teams are hitting the market. You mentioned the Broncos. There was the Senators up in Ottawa. Those are cases where an owner's died and the heirs are selling the team. In other cases, there's a forced sale, right? Robert Sarver in Phoenix, Dan Snyder in Washington. Those are situations where maybe the owner wouldn't want to sell, but there's pressure that kind of force those transactions. And then, you have some situations where there's an aging owner and maybe you have heirs or children that either can't afford or don't want to continue to own the team. And so they are making transactions before their debts. And that maybe explains some of the other ones we've seen. For instance, you raised Baltimore's the most recent one. So I think a handful of reasons informing some of these transactions.
Are the numbers, the teams, their value bloated? Is it like the housing market?
It depends who you ask. I would say at this point, still, the overwhelming sentiment is no. The sense is that these assets, there are a number of reasons that explain why they are so valuable. Namely that they're recession resilient. So we've seen every time there's been an economic downturn, we saw it during COVID, valuations have not fallen in the way that other assets have. We've also seen that it's not correlated to public markets, which is hard to find. And thirdly, and maybe most importantly, is the scarcity. There are very few of these teams, and they're not really making more of them, except for the occasional expansion round. And so you have some of these really economic justifications that would explain why these teams are worth billions and billions of dollars.
But also, do you have franchises that are losing value?
We haven't really seen that yet. I think one example, there was a sense that maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers, if you remember when LeBron James left that team, that could be an example of a team losing some value just because it went from being one of the most relevant teams in the NBA to not being such. But we haven't really seen a decline yet. And I think the question now is, as we're seeing some of the regional sports networks go under and face bankruptcy, and seeing maybe some challenges to the fundamental model for how these teams operate on the business side. The question is, are we going to see valuations begin to plateau? But we haven't really seen that just yet.
But also, if you're looking at what is the best investment for your money with the biggest upside, so what sport would you say would be the place to put your money?
I think there's sort of two ends of the spectrum on that. One is the NFL, right? The NFL is the very top end, obviously the most valuable, the most expensive teams. They generate a tremendous amount of cash. You have these national media deals that are unrivaled across the pro sports landscape. That is a space where I think there's really no concerns there's going to be a downturn. On the other end of the spectrum, I would say something like women's sports, right? We saw the NWSL. They have record transaction values, it feels like, every few months. Michelle Kang acquires the Washington Spirit for $35 million. Expansion teams at a record $53 million. We're now seeing the team in Portland sell for $63 million. And it feels like there's really a lot of momentum in the women's sports space. And I think a lot of people, especially younger fans, are now moving into women's sports. So there's a lot of upside there. So I would say if that's one area, and you're seeing a lot of sophisticated, a lot of smart investors looking to women's sports for that, to capitalize on that potential upside.
What was the impact on Lionel Messi with MLS as far as helping other teams and their values?
I think, so Miami obviously has had a tremendous explosion financially. The other teams, it is hard to quantify just yet, but it's, I think in MLS, the rising tide lifts all boats, always. And with the World Cup coming in a few years here to the United States and broadly into North America, I think there are a lot of people who are very bullish on that space. So if especially if you have more of these big name European players who are going to follow in Messi's footsteps, right, and have this talent that people care about in a big way, that's going to help in a big way. And you just see, the kind of the media rights deals and sponsorships that follow those.
If you could buy any team in the United States, what team would you want?
For personal and financial reasons, I might go New York Yankees, just being a fan. And, I think when you look at teams that you would want to own, you're looking for major markets, you're looking for global brands, these teams that are able to generate tremendous amounts of revenue, not just off of what they're doing game day, selling tickets, selling beer, selling hot dogs, but also have the brand globally that they can capitalize on. So that might be top of my list.
What about the Dodgers, the impact that Shohei Ohtani? How do you recoup that money with Shohei?
I think there's a few ways. I mean, one is that there's going to be a whole lot more revenue coming off of Shohei signing, right? When you think about new fans who are going to come to the team, they're going to be able to sell much, much more merchandise. They're able to raise ticket prices, raise prices in the stadium.
Well, could he be a bargain?
Yes, because of the way that contract was structured, and with that deferred money,
Yeah.
and you think about something like inflation, a long-term deal like that, $1 is going to be a whole lot less expensive to spend in 10 years than it is now, and so it's obviously to be determined whether he can continue playing at this pace, at this rate, and kind of for how long. But if he stays anywhere close to what he's been doing the last few years, that deal could look pretty good in another decade or so.
Great to talk to you, Chris. Doing a great job. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for joining us. That's Chris Smith, Sports Business Journal staff writer, covering these teams being sold.